This is it. Welcome to the Chaotic Cutting Board. This is the showstopper of all cutting boards. And when you make this, that's it. No one's going to want anything else from you. This process is a beginner's process. As you can see, we're going through the phases of creating a rectangular chaotic pattern. It's an absolutely stunning pattern. This doesn't even have a finish on it. Wait until we get to the end of this video and you have a chance to actually see this thing come to life. I'm going to be using a handful of different woods: walnut, maple, mahogany, padauk, and cherry. All these woods are fantastic in a cutting board, and they have great durability, and what's nice about them is that regardless of your home decor, it's going to fit right in. At this point, we would go through a typical milling process. You're going to take your lumber and you're going to make sure that they're relatively square. I'm not going to mess around with any of that. I'm buying lumber straight from my local lumber company, and I've got 3 sides that are perfectly surfaced. I'm going straight to the table saw. And I'm not going to show this process because it's boring. Let's talk about the lumber a little. We can make these boards out of 4/4 and 8/4 lumber. Mine is a blend of both. I'm roughly, let's say 90% of the lumber in here is 4/4 with the occasional 8/4 piece. What's important is that you can mill, whether it's the 4/4, 8, or the 8/4, is that you can mill this lumber safely. Now let's talk about this next step. We're going to be cutting everything into 2-inch strips. Roughly 2 inches by 26 to 28 inches is perfectly fine. If everything's not uniform, it doesn't matter. If you have shorter, then keep those to the side and glue all your shorter pieces up together. When you're done cutting these strips, what you're going to do is you're going to glue these up like this. So they're going to be 2 inches tall. We do not want to do our glue up like this. We don't want that. So you've made all your strips, you have your big pile. Now you're going to come around, you're going to glue everything up, basically what we're going to call face to face. And there you're going to have a nice big series of strips all glued together. Final thing here, really important. When you do your glue ups, make sure your glue ups actually can fit in your planer. I know, but I'm talking from experience here. If you make your glue up bigger than your planer, it doesn't fit. Genius. So have a great time through this first phase. Get everything cut up and get everything glued up, and then I'm going to meet you actually at the table saw of our next steps. See you there. Trimmed off all of our fingers, got everything looking pretty good, and now we're going to head to the planer. When we're done with the planer, we're going to come back here and we're going to talk about what our next step's going to be, because that is the first step towards making our chaotic pattern. All look fantastic, and we're ready to start creating our chaotic pattern. So how do we create this chaotic pattern? Well, at this moment, it needs to be more of a vision. You have to be able to see in your mind that we're going to transition through a phase of rip cuts that are going to create different size end grain rectangles, which are then going to be flipped to the end grain position and mix and matched with all these other varieties of cut widths and become this amazing chaotic presentation. But at this exact moment, let's focus on what we need to do. We know how we want to get there, or we know where we want to get to, but now we need to focus on how are we going to get there. And the first phase of this is going back to the table saw and doing a whole nother series of rips. And we're going to be doing this by allowing the glue line to be our guide. This glue line is something we do not want to cut into again. We're now going to cut on each side of the glue line, 1/16, an eighth, half an inch, all random, and create a whole nother pile of these long strips, then go through the process of putting them all back together, doing another glue up, going back to the planer, and then ultimately ending up back right here in this exact same spot to talk about how we're going to flip this to end grain. Let's take a quick look at what we've done so far, just as an example, before we start progressing through all of these boards. You can see on this one, I've cut on the side of the glue line, maybe 3/16. On this one, I was actually on the glue line close to half an inch. On this guy right here, I was just off the glue line, a hair over 1/16 of an inch. And this one, we're probably at roughly 1/4. You can, as you're progressing through these cuts, start to sneak both sides closer to the glue line and create some really thin strips. What's important here is just be creative and stay off that glue line and take your time. To work through all these boards like this is going to take some time, so be patient, be safe, take a couple breaks, and then I'll see you back here, because it's going to be a lot of cuts. Man, that was some serious milling right there. Well, now we get to glue it all back up. We're almost there. Don't lose faith. I think this is actually my favorite part. You kind of get to thumb through your pieces and just lay out, get a lot of creativity, get those thick pieces in there. I definitely want a nice chunky piece of maple in here. Still kind of figuring out where. I'm thinking maybe right here would be perfect. We'll just take that and actually flip that. Those chunky pieces are really cool because they're going to give off a lot of dimension to everything else. These are looking sweet. I love it. All kinds of different sizes through here. Our color combinations are all over the place. You may even be thinking right now, I'm just going to run this through the planer. I'm going to wax it as is, oil it as is, and be done. Don't give in. You are officially on the home stretch right now. We're going to head back to the planer. We're going to flatten everything up. We're going to take a little more time now to get everything as flat as possible. From there, we're going to come back to this spot with our flat boards, and we're going to talk about the next step. Man, these things are looking killer. Our chaotic pattern is going to be all right. Things are really starting to come to life now. We went through the planer, flattened all these boards out, transitioned to the crosscut sled, and revealed these beautiful end grain patterns. As you can see, I have I've got 5 boards right here. Once we start slicing these boards into finished heights and start rotating these patterns and mixing and matching them, the chaotic life of this is going to really start to show. Now we need to make a decision about how thick or how tall do we want our cutting board to be. I ultimately want these boards to be about 3/4 of an inch, possibly an inch, which means that I want to give myself an additional 1/4 inch of wiggle room so I can really finish these properly and get these boards super flat. I think from here, we're on the home stretch. We're going to head to the crosscut sled. We're going to go ahead and set up a stop block, and we're going to cross cut now all of these pieces so that we can actually start to lay out our finished cutting boards for their final glue up. I can't wait. This is when things get really fun. Everything's been cut down to size. Each of the boards are stacked in their own pile. And now's where the magic happens. I've taken 2 pieces out of each of the piles, and we're going to flip these end grain, rotate them around, and then bring together this beautiful chaotic pattern. I can already see what this is going to look like when we put oil and wax on it. It's going to be absolutely stunning. But now, before we get to enjoy that, we have to go ahead and do our final glue up. We're going to get all this glued together, then we're going to head to the planer. When we make passes through the planer, I want you to envision taking a 64th and no more than a 32nd per pass. The best way to imagine this in your planer is there should be no reduction in speed. If you notice in your planers, when you run something thicker through and you're taking off more material than normal, it slows down the planer. You will know when you're taking the lightest possible pass you can when the piece in the planer does not slow down. It goes through and comes right out. Second thing I want you to pay attention to is you need to round over this back edge. This is the last part of the board that's going through the planer. If we don't round this over, the planer blades are going to chip this out, and we don't want that, and we want to try to avoid that. So you can round that over with a 1/4 inch router bit, or you can even hit it with a block plane, or you can do it with a hand sander. Even an electric sander is perfectly fine. So I'm not going to see you until after we go through those steps. So glue up through the planer, 64th, max 32nd at a time, and make sure you round over this back edge. If you've made it this far, give yourself a high five. As you can see, the effort is worth the reward. These boards are absolutely stunning, and they don't even have final sanding on them. This is straight out of the planer and then off of the table saw to clean up these edges. Now you're at the point where you get to be creative. Are you going to round over the edges? Do you have a plan to put rubber feet on it? Are you going to cut in a juice groove? Maybe take it down to your local CNC. Do some fancy carving or put some initials on this top. At this point, it's all up to you. And then we'll finish this with walrus oil, cutting board oil, and then a cutting board wax. Congratulations! No more glue ups. We're in a great spot right now. Everything is ready for its next and then final steps. I'm going to run over all my boards with a quick 120. So I have my 2 Lazy Susan boards, a cutting board, and then I've got a little mini cutting board that I was able to put together with leftovers. Once I do that, then I'm going to cut these Lazy Susans, come back, run it with 120, and then go up the grits through 320. Absolutely stunning. We did it. We went step by step. We thought through our cuts. We thought through our glue ups. And here's our results. An absolute amazing presentation of the chaotic cutting board. Turned into a Lazy Susan on my end. I can't thank you enough for being on this journey with me. If you're gonna step up and go through these steps and take your time and build one of these boards, these are the results that you can expect. And I hope that you'll take a moment and tag me on your Instagram. That way I can see the boards that you build. Moving forward, please take a moment, like this video, subscribe, and if you have a comment, let me know. I think we should make a dozen more of these.